Welcome back, friends of the podcast, general Trekkies and geeks and people who are going to hopefully want to check out this interview. It's the third in our series of interviews with people from the Trek world, and it's by far our longest and most detailed. We've already recorded it at time of recording this intro, so we can say you're in for a treat, first of all. We definitely recommend listening to it all the way through, even if you have to break it into chunks. But this is going to be our interview with, as you can see on screen, Fred Bronson. If you're not familiar with the name, you are definitely familiar with the work. Fred wrote the episode The Counterclock Incident for the animated series, though under a pseudonym, John Culver. And he also co-wrote with Susan Sackett the episodes Menage a Troy and The Game for The Next Generation. He's also was close personal friends with the late, great Gene Roddenberry and Majel Barrett, and has massive friendships from his time at NBC from throughout the Star Trek world. He's also a massive science fiction geek, just like the rest of us. Including myself, as you can probably tell from my shirt. Choose your spaceship, which I think you can't really tell, but it's got Planet Express, TARDIS, Battlestar, Serenity, Enterprise, and the Millennium Falcon. So yeah,
nice.
Oh, what's that on your shirt? I can see there.
It says Forever Uhura. It's a tribute to Nichelle Nichols, and it was gratefully given to me. Excuse me. From Russ Hasledge and the guys at the Federation, which is an organisation that has stations worldwide that support local charities. So, if you get a chance, I'll try and put the description down and visit. And maybe there's a local chapter near you that you can help out with.
Awesome, that's great. Always proud to boost charities and things.
Yeah. My mind is now straining which ship I want.
Oh,
I'm trying to.
The cursor on the thing has selected Millennium Falcon, but I've got to be honest, if the Enterprise is right next door, I'm not picking that. No offense, Han. But
yeah, I don't know. I do have as much as I love the Enterprise and the TARDIS, the beds in the Falcon do look kind of comfy. And, I'm a bit of a sloth at times, so I think I might have to go with that one.
Do stick around for the interview. There is actually quite a nice story about Nichelle Nichols, actually, so that feeds in quite nicely. And hopefully you will enjoy. Fred talks us through everything. We start off with well over an hour talking about all things Star Trek, so that's why you'll be finding that on this channel. Then we talk about various things, including music, which Fred is hugely into, and his work in that area. We talk about his love of comic books because he sent me some letters pages from comics that he wrote to as a youngster. And so there's lots to enjoy. So do take it all in and do... Please like, subscribe, etc. Send us positive feedback. You'll hear all of our information in our new intro and outro anyway. Thanks to Timeless Journeys for that. We'll say that now rather than the outro. And DK, any last thoughts before we head in?
No, I'm just going to say without further ado, here's Fred.
There we go. It's a pleasure to meet you. It's an honor to have spent some time with you here. And thanks again for agreeing to do it.
Oh, I'm really glad to be here. Thanks. Glad you guys asked me to do this. Which one's Mike?
I'm Mike. Sorry, I should have introduced us both.
Yeah.
You are DK.
So we've got a bunch of questions because, as I say, you've had a massive and varied career, to say the least. So I think we're going to. Because we are a Star Trek podcast, we're going to start off talking about that so the audience can breathe a sigh of relief there, maybe. I think we're going to start off talking about your career and what led to Star Trek, but we have a sort of a rough order, and I think, DK, you had the first question for Fred, yeah?
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to start with, when did you decide you wanted to be a writer? Was it a gradual thing, or was there kind of a light bulb moment that prompted it?
It was a light bulb, and I can't explain it, but it happened when I was 5 years old.
Wow.
I don't know how or why, just that it did. I just knew I wanted to be a writer, and the reason I remember that it happened then is in first grade, I was never very athletic. And so during recess, while the other kids were off maybe playing, dodgeball or something, I had a pad of paper and I was sitting on the steps writing. I have no idea what I was writing. And I don't, although I've saved a lot of stuff, I don't have any record of but there I was. So somehow I knew I don't know how.
Wow,
Oh, fantastic.
That early writing could be like Beatles manuscripts or something.
Yeah.
Potentially, but yeah.
I'm old enough that was even before the Beatles. This was more
Oh, wow.
Elvis. This was really
wow.
early. Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you kept them, or did they fall by the wayside over the years?
Oh, things I wrote.
Yeah.
I moved 3 years ago. I am just now going through storage boxes, and I am finding a lot of things. I did tend to save everything. I wrote a series of stories when I was, I don't know, maybe 12. It was sort of a cross between the Hardy Boys and Adam Strange.
Oh, wow. Awesome.
Yeah. There's about two brothers who had a teleport beam to other planets. And every story was a different planet that they caught this beam to, clearly stolen from Adam Strange. But so I found those. I haven't reread them yet. The early ones are handwritten, and then a little bit later they're typewritten. So I'm gonna sit down and read them and see what did I write back then.
Oh, I'd love to read those if you ever get them published.
Probably nobody would publish them, but I don't know. I'll let you know after I read them.
Fair enough.
I might have to summarize. I read a lot of science fiction growing up, so.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, well, I think obviously being Star Trek fans, we're all big sort of sci-fi nerds in general. As you can probably tell from my Select Your Spaceship T-shirt that I'm wearing.
I've got Nichelle.
Oh, you got Nichelle. I got the Eurovision Song Contest.
Nice.
The one that
we are both fans.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But they'd already made the shirts, so.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow. That's kind of a collector's item of sorts then, obviously.
Yeah.
Awesome. So obviously that's kind of explained a little bit about what brought you to writing in general. So I was just curious how you got started at NBC and what was your journey to Star Trek specifically?
Well, so Star Trek, as we all know, premiered on September 8th, 1966, coincided with the start of my freshman year of college a few days later. So I graduated high school June of 66, and then along came Star Trek, and I watched that very first episode. I'd like to say I was hooked right away, but I missed week 2.
Right.
But by week 3, I decided I was not going to miss this again. Because, no videotaping. You had to wait for a rerun to see something. So I was hooked, early on. Maybe not week 1, but early on. And I wanted to write for it, but I was 17 years old. I didn't have any contacts. So, you're now if you do the math, you're going to figure out my age. So maybe I said too much.
We can bleep it if you like.
It's out there online. So what am I going to do? It's okay. I'm just glad I'm still here. So I I took a class in college, a script writing class, and the assignment for the semester was to write a script for an existing property. So of course I wrote a script for Star Trek, but I didn't know how to get it to anybody. I found that recently too. It's called Monument.
Oh, wow.
Actually, I reread it. It is not a bad story, but elements of it have shown up in other episodes, so I couldn't just do it. In fact, the main element, they find a planet. A landing party goes down to a planet and finds a monument of them, and they're pulled back into the past. And Spock, it's 5,000 years ago. And Spock reverts to his barbaric. This is way before all our yesterdays, where they. I just made it up, but anyway. So I'd have to do some. Anyway, I don't know if that'll ever see the light of day anywhere. And then Orville had an episode where they find a statue of Kelly, and it reminded me a little bit of Monument. Anyway, so I had I graduated. Well, I had a 5-year college course, and the 4th year I was editor of our school paper, And the next semester, I thought, I've been spending like 50, 60 hours a week putting out a daily newspaper. What am I going to do now to fill up my time? And I had heard that in the past, some journalism students had an internship at NBC in publicity. And I thought, I'd like to do that. So I went to my department. I said, can I do that? They said, yeah, if you can set it up, you'll get college credit for it. So I called the NBC publicity department and they said, sure, we can do that. So for an entire semester, I went 2 days a week and worked with different publicists. And a month after I graduated, they hired me. So I was there for 12 years. And 1970, well, they knew I was a big science fiction fan. In fact, they knew I had marched on NBC and, in season 2 to keep Star Trek on the air. So nice. There was no hiding that my passion for Star Trek. So I was assigned every science fiction series that was on the air during my tenure there, including Man from Atlantis, Buck Rogers, The Bionic Woman, Voyagers, The Powers of Matthew Starr. Some of these are not well known at all, but anyway.
Oh, they are to us.
Yeah. That's good. That's good. And I had a great time working on all of those shows. But in 1973, Star Trek came to Saturday morning, and I was the publicist. And when it went off the air, and after 3 seasons of the original series, I thought, well, that's it. No more Star Trek ever. My opportunity to write for it is gone. It'll never happen. Now the animated series. So it was back. I treated it like it was a primetime show. I was setting up interviews for Gene, and it was. I paid a lot of attention to it, and then I thought, I should try to write for it. So season 1, I did submit a few ideas, and Dorothy Fontana didn't like any of them. I found the rejection letter recently where she goes, no. So season 2, only 6 episodes, and I thought, okay, I knew it was coming to an end. So once again, this is it. After this, no more Star Trek ever. I better write for it now. So I came up with an idea for a script. I knew all the people at Filmation very well because I was working with them all the time. And so I submitted to Filmation. They liked it, but NBC did not. And by the way, I had to do it under another name. Not the name I used. Yeah. This was another name.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
Michael Gordy, because I was a big Motown fan.
Good choice of first name.
Michael's my middle name. So Michael.
Oh, awesome. Fair enough.
Yeah. So NBC didn't like it because I was recreating Earth's World War II on another planet. And they said, we don't really want to do World War II on Saturday morning. So when I sent that one in, there were only 2 slots left. They had 4 scripts. They only needed 2 more. And by the time that one got rejected, they had bought 1 more script. And now there's literally 1 slot left. That's when I came up with the counter clock incident. And I thought, I don't know if anybody caught on that I was Michael Gordy, but just in case, I'm going to find another name. I grew up in Culver City, California. John just was a random pick. It turned out John Culver at that time was one of the senators from Iowa, but I didn't know that when I picked the name. So I came up with, what I call the counter clock incident, and Filmation loved it, and NBC loved it. So I made it in just in the nick of time.
Yeah.
That was my first sale to television.
Oh, wow.
Awesome. Oh, fantastic.
Great.
It was, I just feel lucky that all the pieces fell into place,
Yeah. Well, I mean, you've already touched upon my next question, which was that you worked at a publicist for NBC, and you did PR work on a number of fondly remembered shows. You've mentioned a lot of them: Man from Atlantis, Buck Rogers, things like Bonanza. And what I was surprised to find out, Voyagers, which I thought was a tremendous little show. I was only introduced to it a couple of years ago and I thought it hugely entertaining. So if any of the listeners out there haven't checked it out, please do so.
It's pretty good, right? Good time travel story. Yeah.
And it encourages kids to go to their local library. I love that little aspect of the show at the end.
How did you find it 2 years ago? Was it airing somewhere?
No, my significant other, she watched it as a child and she mentioned it to me and I said, I've never heard of it. She says, oh, I used to love that show. So I bought her the box set DVD for Christmas. And I ended up sitting there watching them all with her. And I absolutely adore it. I think it's a shame it didn't last.
It was a great little show to work on. So side note, the two stars, John Eric Hexum, who met a tragic end later, and Mino Pelusi, who is the brother of Soleil Moon Frye, who played Punky Brewster on
I didn't know that.
We all went to see Poltergeist together. We were in Century City, California. We were going to do a pressing in the afternoon. We had a couple hours and it had just opened. So we said, hey, let's go to the movies. So I saw Poltergeist with John Eric and Mino. Mino's also the first person this ever happened to, so with me. So he was 12. And when we were, doing pre-publicity, he said to me one day, how long have you worked at NBC? And since it had been 12 years, I said, since right before you were born. The first. Now I can say that to a lot of people. He was the first person I ever said that to.
Fair enough.
That's awesome. Did you have a favorite show to work on while you were at NBC?
I had a few. I really enjoyed working on Buck Rogers, Gil and Aaron, Felix, who played Tweaky, and Wilfred Hyde White in season 2. They were all fantastic to work with. I really enjoyed BJ and the Bear, not a sci-fi show, but Greg Evigan was the star of that. Great to work with. I worked on, now I'm going to sound older than I am because I was only 10 years old when this show went on the air, Bonanza.
Yeah. Oh, cool.
I worked the final season, and they treated me like I'd been there all along. They treated me like family, and I really loved working. Even though I only did the last season, I loved working on that show. I hardly had any shows I didn't like working on. Patrick Duffy was great on Man from Atlantis. I enjoyed most of the shows I worked on.
Oh, fantastic! It's always good to have job satisfaction.
Yes.
That's brilliant. Awesome. My next question, you've kind of already touched on because it was going to just be how you came to write the counterclock incident. Obviously, you've already kind of touched on that. But my next question after that was just going to be, do you have any sort of, what are some of your fondest or even strangest memories of working within the Star Trek world?
I have so many. One was for the last 20 years of his life, I was friends with Gene. I first met him when I was a college freshman, and it was the first season of Star Trek, and I thought, I'd like to interview him for the college paper. This is way before I became the editor. It was one of the first things I ever wrote for the paper. I went to the entertainment editor and said, I'd like to do an interview with Gene Roddenberry. He said, if you can get that, we'll run it, of course. So I got it. Now, that didn't begin a friendship. That was just, I went in, I interviewed him. It was great. And, as far as I knew, and I'm sure he didn't give it any thought, that was the end of that. But then when I went to work at NBC, before the animated Star Trek, I was the publicist for Questor. And I loved working with Robert Foxworth and Mike Farrell. That was really loved. NBC picked it up, but then they pulled the plug after they picked it up, as we all know. So that's where I really started working with Gene. And then the animated, like I say, I set a lot of interviews for him while that was on. And then same year of the second season, 74, he had an assistant when he was based at Warner Brothers, and Gene was going to leave the lot, and the assistant didn't want to go with him because he had seniority at Warner Brothers. If he left, he'd lose all that. So Gene needed a new assistant. I had a friend who was out of work, and I had known her for about 4 years at this point, Susan Sackett. And so I arranged, it's a longer story than I'm going to tell now, but through me, Susan got an interview with Gene, and he hired her. And she started on his birthday in 1974, on August 19th, and she was with him until he died. So 17 years. So that really solidified the friendship, because first of all, he was very grateful that I sent him Susan. And years later, he was looking for a personal assistant at home, someone to drive him. And I sent a friend of mine over, and he got that job. So the two people who were really supporting him were through me, but we became friends. And I have a lot of really, really great memories of hanging out with Gene.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I mean, you've touched on my next question. You've pretty much answered it already. It was, how did you become friends? Did it take you time to warm to each other? But do you have any particular memories about Gene as a person? Any incidents that stand out in your mind that our audience may not know about? Or
a few, and they're from all different, points of time during these 17 years. One was like 1990. So once Susan started working for him, I would go over and have lunch with them maybe a couple times a month. So years later, in 1990, we're having lunch in the commissary at Paramount, and somehow the subject turned to legacy. And I don't know where this came to me from, but I said, Gene, they're still going to be writing stories about Kirk and Spock in the 21st century. And he said, yeah, and they'll do it better than I did it. That was him. But, along comes the first J.J. Abrams movie in 2009.
Yeah.
And I thought, God, I was right. They're still writing stories about what do you know? I was comparing it to how they had done a play in LA about adult Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn with Mark Leonard and Walter Koenig as the two stars. And that made me think, well, they're still writing stories about Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn. They're still going to be writing stories about Kirk and Spock. That was my jumping off spot. Other stories, gosh. Well, Gene was very generous and would never let Susan or me pay for a meal ever, except on his birthday. We were allowed to take him out on his birthday. So the last 3 years before he was too ill in 91 to really go out on his birthday. But the 3 years previous, the first year we just did a commissary lunch. The second year, I thought, I got to top that. So there was a Bank of America building in downtown LA, and on the top floor, which was like the 52nd floor or something, they had a dining room with some private rooms. And the private rooms were, a full window, and you could see the whole city of Los Angeles spread out in front of you. So we went there for lunch. Then I thought the next year, I got to top that. So we went down to Newport Beach, is about an hour drive away. And we went to the Ritz-Carlton Hotel and Laguna Niguel, actually, near Newport Beach, and had a great lunch. And our waiter's name was Wesley, which was Gene's middle name, not let alone, Wesley Crusher. So I had to say to the waiter, by the way, this gentleman's middle name is Wesley. And, anyway. The next year he was too ill, but I was going to get on a plane and fly to San Francisco for lunch. That was the plan. But, the last 6 weeks of his life, he was really homebound, not coming into the office. So there's a lot more. Chicago in May of 91 was just a few months before he passed away. He was getting an award at the Humanist Foundation or Society. I'm not sure what they call it. And so Susan and I went to Chicago. He had been in Washington, D.C., so he met us in Chicago and surprised us by picking us up at the airport. and we were whisked off to the John Hancock building, which is 100 stories high, and had drinks overlooking the city of Chicago. But there was a lot of fun and a lot of laughter, and of course, so pitching stories for Next Generation. I'm jumping ahead here, if that's okay.
Yeah, it's fine.
So the season 1 of first of all, in 1986, they were having, I was not part of it, but they were having meetings at Paramount. Gene and David Gerald was in the room, and Susan and a few other people developing Next Generation. And so Susan would tell me, well, all right, the captain's name is Picard, and the doctor is Beverly Crusher, and she has a daughter named Leslie, and yada, yada, yada. We know that changed. Yeah. And I started thinking up ideas. So season 1, I actually went in and pitched, because by that time I was in the Writers Guild. So, if you're in the guild and you're represented, you could go in and pitch to the producers. I pitched to a producer named Bob Lewin, who was there season 1, and he liked one of my ideas, which I called the mnemonic enemy. And we open on the bridge, and Troy is in command, and Crusher's on the bridge, and we soon realized there are no men on the ship, and the women have no memory that there were ever men on the ship. It turns out the men have been stolen for breeding stock, and the women's memories erased. So he liked it, and he said, unfortunately, we have another script. It's not the same story, but it is about men, the division of men and women. And I like yours, so I'm going to fight for you. Well, he didn't win the fight.
Yeah.
Angel 1 was the script that got made. It was just too close in thought. So Susan had also pitched and didn't succeed. So season 2, we decided to team up. And this time Gene said, all right, this year, just pitch to me. He wasn't, taking pitches. He was still very active and still there every day. But, Maurice Hurley was the showrunner season 2, and he was the person you pitched to. But Gene said, pitch to me, and if I like it, I'll get it, get it to Maurice. So we came up with an idea. It's going to sound a little cliched now because it's been done, but I promise you when we did it, it had never been done before.
Right.
And we called it Past Lives. A Starfleet historian from the future comes back and accidentally causes the death of Picard. So they've got to create a time loop and, make it that she never comes back. So Gene liked it and bought the story, which is the first step. I'm writing a narrative, not a script. Well, nobody else liked it. Oh. We liked it, and even now reading it back, I thought it was pretty good. But Rick Berman had a thing back then. He didn't want to do time travel at all. I don't know why, because as you know, later on, in fact, he wrote, but at season 2, he didn't want to do it. So then there was a change in showrunners. Michael Piller came in season 3, and we thought, hey, we've got a shot. And Michael Piller said, no, I don't really like that story. Oh. So, but Michael let us come in and pitch. And so Susan and I came up with 12 ideas. Nowadays, they tell you come in with 3 or 4. No one's going to listen to you with 12 ideas. Right. But we came in with 12 ideas. And we met with the whole writing staff. First, though, we took Gene out to lunch at a Mexican restaurant in Beverly Hills and said, look, we know we're pitching to Michael, but we just want to share our ideas with you. And if there's anything you hate, we won't pitch that. Well, he liked all 12. So we felt, okay, we're going to go in with all 12. So we're in the meeting and we start. And it's either, no, we're never going to do that. We're already doing that.
Yeah.
We literally went through 11 of our ideas that had not touched him yet. Our 12th idea was based on an O. Henry short story called The Ransom of Red Chief. and we called it The Ransom of Mrs. Troy. Aliens kidnap Mrs. Troy and can't wait to give her back. And Michael, he said he liked it, but we didn't feel like he wasn't quite there yet. And I don't know why I said this, but I said, look, we all know there's going to be a Mrs. Troy story this season. There'd only been one already, but I said, and I think we have the best one. And Michael said, well, you kind of do. All right, we're going to, write the story. And so we did that, and they gave us the go-ahead to write the script. They could have easily written the script themselves, but so our original title was The Ransom of Mrs. Troy, but the story developed, with Ferengi, not just any aliens, but Ferengi. And then we called it Peace of Mind, Piece, because they wanted a piece of her mind. And although, we got to go ahead for script and all of that, Michael Pillar said, we don't want to do a title that's a play on words. So come up with another title. So Susan and I went to dinner in Burbank this time. And we lived like 5 minutes from each other. And we came up with all these stupid titles that we didn't really mean, like My Stepmother is a Ferengi and things like that. So finally we're driving, back home, and this phrase just popped into my head. Pas de deux. And I thought, no, it's not two, it's three. It's more of a ménage à trois. Ménage à trois. Obviously a play on words. So the next morning, Susan went into Gene and said, Michael wants a new title. Fred and I came up with Ménage à Troy, and we really like it. So Gene wrote a memo to Michael Pillar saying, Fred and Susan have a new title, and I really like it. It's Ménage à Troy. Since Gene really liked it, that's how we got Ménage à Troy to be the title of the episode.
Oh, fantastic.
Oh, and so, we were freelance, right? And even though Susan worked for Gene, we weren't on staff. Well, freelance writers especially are not invited to be on the set. I think it's because they're afraid you're going to go, that's not what I meant. So
exactly, yeah.
But Susan went to Gene and said, it's our first sale and we'd like to be on. He said, go ahead. So for 7 days, we were on the set. But we got special dispensation. When they made the game, we only went 1 day because we didn't want to, wear out our welcome.
Yeah. Touching upon that, on the past lives thing, is there anything that you would have pitched for the show had the animated series continued, or the original series, or now that we've touched upon it, on the Next Generation? Is there anything that once the game came out you had in mind to pitch further?
We did pitch further. We just didn't. After Gene died, I don't know if it was because he wasn't there anymore. I really don't know. We did pitch. I remember one pitch to Michael Pillar. Again, this is something they did later, but at this point they hadn't done it. I said, all right, we open on the Enterprise and this is happening and this is happening, and the Enterprise blows up. And then we go backward and find out why, what happened. And Michael said to me, oh, you mean like the musical Merrily We Roll Along, which is a Sondheim musical where the story goes backward? And I said, well, exactly like that, because that was the inspiration for the story. He said, well, we're not going to do that. We all know in Voyager, they did a story that went backward, with Kes. So, but that was a few years later, what are you going to do? Right. But yeah, we pitched, but we made no further sales. I came close. I went again, this is a few years later. Deep Space Nine, I think it was like season 5 or 6, and I went in. And Ira Stephen Bear, although he wasn't taking pitches, he knew me from Next Generation. He said, "Well, pitch to me." I said, "Oh, great," and he liked my story, but it really involved Dax, Terry Farrell's character, and then she left. And so I think that was sort of the end. I probably could have adapted it for her replacement, but it really felt like a Dax and Worf story. It was sort of an Adam and Eve thing where they're transported to a planet and they're the only two people and they're going to start a whole civilization, but the Enterprise has to find them.
Okay, cool.
Nice.
Yeah, it's apologies, it's slightly backtracking a little bit, and you've probably answered this question a lot.
Because I jumped ahead.
Yeah. So when you wrote the counterclock incident, did you ever imagine that a character who you brought to life would eventually be realized in live action decades later? And have you had a chance to see Adrian Holmes's performance, and what did you think of it? Of Admiral Robert April, Commodore, of course, in your script. But,
yes, good questions. Well, at the time, no. First of all, I thought, remember, there's no more Star Trek ever after the animated, so I didn't see any future for Robert April. Thinking him up, the process was that since they were our crew was going to become too young to run the ship, I needed an older adult who would revert to young adulthood and could get them home. And so I thought, well, who would that be? And I thought, did they ever say that Pike was the first captain? So I went back and rewatched the Menagerie. They never said, only that he was Kirk, came before Kirk, but they never said he was the first captain. I thought, well, then I think there's room for me to come up with Pike's predecessor.
Yeah.
And I didn't have a name yet, but just the idea, the character. And I found this book today in my storage boxes, The Making of Star Trek, which was the first book ever about Star Trek. I found the paperback tonight. Well, in that book, there was a list of names that Gene had considered. 9 names, as I recall. Obviously, Kirk was on there, Pike was on there, and Robert April was on there. Now, at that moment, I did not know that Robert April was a character he originally used in an episode of Have Gun Will Travel. I only found that out years later. But I thought, of all the names that hadn't been used yet, I like Robert April the best. So I named him Robert April thinking, why not pick a name that I know Gene's going to like, right? What could it hurt? So that's how I came up with the name. But no, at that moment, I thought, no, they're never going to see him again. But then he did appear in other novels. He appeared in, well, let me tell you a story. So now it's 2009, and J.J. Abrams is making his first movie. Yeah. And at the same time, I get invited along with a few other people, including B. Joe Trimble and David Gerald and Chris Duane, to be interviewed for a DVD extra, all the people that Gene picked to be extras in the motion picture. A lot of fans auditioned, but he handpicked a few people that we didn't have to audition. So they were interviewing us in 2009 about doing that. We filmed it back in 1978. At the end of the interview, which was on a Paramount stage, they said, we want to walk you over to stage 18, which is where you did this 30 years ago, and just have you walking up to the set. We're not going to go inside, just walk up to the stage. So we went over, and that's where they were filming the first J.J. Abrams Star Trek movie. So I'm standing there with Chris as we're waiting to go in, and a golf cart pulls up, and Chris says, hi, J.J., because he had already filmed a bit for the movie. And J.J. says, hi, Chris. Comes over to talk, and Chris introduces me as someone who wrote and animated a couple episodes. And J.J. says, oh, have you seen the new sets? And I said, kind of high security. So no. He said, do you want to?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, if we can. Next thing I know, they're putting wristbands on us, and we're signing NDAs, and we're ushered in, and JJ's with us. And we're there for about 20 minutes. And I think, I'm a big J.J. Abrams fan. I loved Lost. I thought, this is my chance. Have a word with J.J. So I went over and I said, J.J., I understand you've got Captain Pike in the film. He said, yeah, we're using that character in the movie. And I said, well, in my animated episode, I introduced Robert April. And he said, yeah, he's not in the movie. And we had a good laugh. Flash forward to 2013, and they're making the second movie, shrouded in secrecy. If you remember, we don't. Is it canon? Is it? We don't know. It's all a secret.
Yeah.
And then in February, they had I was invited, but they had a press conference in JJ's office. And now I'm reading one of the reporters writes, based on what I saw and heard today at JJ Abrams' office, I think one of the major characters in the next movie is Robert April from the animated series. I'm going, what? So I call the reporter. He says, yeah, I saw a storyboard on a desk, and it's Robert April in the storyboard. I thought, oh my God, it's going to happen after all these years. Well, as we all know, it didn't happen. The storyboard he saw was for the prequel comic book, which was about Robert April.
I was going to mention that, yeah.
So, yeah, that's what. So suddenly it's 48 years later. It's 2022. And Robert April in live action. Well, of course, in Discovery, we had his name on, on a screen. So that was something. Yeah. But now there's going to be live action Robert April. So I was blown away. I was very happy. I thought Adrian did I don't know him. I'm just saying his name. I'm calling him on a first name basis. I thought Adrian did a fantastic job. I did tweet, as you know, there was a lot of controversy, which I did not subscribe to, but I tweeted very much on purpose to him saying, thank you for bringing this character I created 48 years ago to life. You did an amazing job. Loved your performance. And of course he retweeted it and all that and replied. So I thought that was very, very nice of him. But and there he was about 2 more episodes after that.
Yeah.
So I'm sure there'll be a Robert April series. No, there won't be an April series.
Well, you never know. You never know.
I've got a title for it.
Really? Oh, go ahead. I want to hear it. Or would you rather keep it secret just in case?
No, I'll tell you. Why not? Star Trek, the early years.
Right. When we both saw, I think it was the pilot of Strange New Worlds and saw Admiral April, I think we both said, now we want to see that series, because it was when Pike appeared in Discovery that everyone was like, I want to see what happened on Pike's Enterprise. And we genuinely both said in our review, now we want to see Adrian Holmes lead the April series,
Let's start a movement. Let's look at them. That seemed to work to keep the original series on the air. So
exactly. Fan power.
Well, you get if you create a character and someone else uses that character in the script, you would, under Writers Guild rules, you would get a character payment. The animated series was not under Writers Guild jurisdiction.
Okay.
Nowadays, many animated series like The Simpsons, they are, but back then they weren't. That meant I got one flat fee, no residuals ever, and no character payment. But those are the rules, so it's okay. But it would have been nice.
Yeah. Well, you'll forever be associated with the character, so you have that on your
I have
on
at
your
least
test.
I have 2 things I've contributed to canon. One is Robert April, and the other is oo-mox, which I made up.
Oh dear!
And then it kept showing up in other series. I thought, well, I guess I made a contribution to canon.
You invented a Ferengi kink. I guess.
Exactly. My twisted mind. What can I say? Well, we were going for comedy, and so
of course. Yeah.
I thought it'd be funny if she was absent-mindedly stroking his ear, and then she finds out what that's doing to him, and she pulls her hand.
Regarding the controversy with Robert April in Strange New Worlds, as you know, since the advent of Discovery back in 2017, there's been a certain subsection of fans that have taken a dislike to Kurtzman's time on the franchise over recent years, claiming it's not Star Trek. Most recently, they've been quoting William Shatner, who stated at a Comic-Con panel earlier this year that Gene would be, and I quote, rolling in his grave at some of the newer additions to the franchise. Now, as a long-time friend of Gene and someone that knew him well, what are your thoughts on this? I mean, what do you think Gene would make of the new shows being produced today?
I honestly think he would love them, especially Strange New Worlds. So I don't know if people know this, but when Rick Berman and Michael Piller brought Deep Space Nine to Gene, he said absolutely not. And 5 days after he died, they announced that they were going to do Deep Space Nine. Now, I had seen Gene change his mind about things. I think he would have changed his mind about Deep Space Nine eventually. He never had the chance. I think he would have liked it. Yes, it wasn't a starship. It was a different take, although, of course, they got a ship later on. But
yeah, of course.
It basically was not, exploring. It was a space station. But I think there was room for that. And they did some brilliant episodes and story arcs. There has not been a series yet that I haven't liked. And I think, I love Lower Decks. I love Prodigy. They're brilliant. And what they do, and that there's room for all these shows at once. I mean, who would have ever thought we'd have 5 concurrent series?
I know, yeah.
It's mind-blowing.
Yeah. So I don't think Gene would be spinning in his grave. I think that was just wrong.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
Sure.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go on, man.
So my next question was going to be, you kind of were addressing already your Next Generation episodes, and you've talked already about how you came to them. But my question about that was basically, when Next Gen started, I think the more geeky fans know that the Ferengi were intended to be a serious antagonist to replace like the Klingons or the Romulans.
Yes.
But by the time you get to Menage a Troi, they kind of already started their evolution, as you touched upon, into more comic relief or sort of comedic characters. Were you aware of that change, and how did it influence how you wrote the episode, or did you just not even realize it would be the Ferengi? Maybe.
No, we purposely made it Ferengi, and we purposely wanted it to be not just a comedy, but a drama with comedic overtones. Yeah. I think it's funny now to think it's about a kidnapping, an abduction, but it's a comedy. But go figure. Yeah. So no, they had evolved at that point to being the having comedic overtones, and so it was very much on purpose that we picked them to be the aliens and to be able to have some fun with it, especially in the teaser when that scene between Luxana and the Damon Togg. I just really enjoyed that. Actually, one of the funniest lines to me in the show, and I wrote it, so who am I to say? But it's subtle. Is when it's in the teaser when, in order to get away from the Ferengi, she comes over to Picard to engage him in conversation, and he's got the Betazoid, Wright and Grax. And he says, "Oh yes. I was just going to show Wright and Grax the new door mechanisms." That was the funny. Oh, that, and at the end when he under his breath says to Wesley, "Warp 9." Anyway, we tried to have some fun with it.
Definitely. I was impressed with Patrick Stewart's kind of comedy chops because he was known as a Shakespearean actor. And sort of when he's delivering the over-the-top soliloquy at the end of, "No, it's better to have loved and lost," I was quite impressed with that. But
we love doing that. And we, standing there and Patrick Stewart is saying your lines. That was an absolute highlight. Oh, one more thing so when we took Gene to lunch to go over we already had the idea that they were going to transport and within the Ferengi ship, and their clothes wouldn't go with them. And we said, "Can we do that?" And Gene said, "Yeah, why not? Of course, you can do that." We also went to him because we knew he wanted to promote Wesley. We just didn't know what episode it was going to be in. So we went to him and kind of begged, "Can we have that in our episode?" He said, "Yeah, you can do that at the end."
Brilliant. Oh, that's excellent. And related to that, again, you've already mentioned that the script was always going to be a Mrs. Troy episode. That was the genesis. Was it intimidating at all, knowing that you were writing for Majel Barrett, for your friend and boss's wife, I guess?
I knew Majel pretty well by that time.
I see.
So it wasn't. Of course, we did run it by Gene first. And since he was down with it, and he said Major will be too, because he said she's an actress. If you give her a good script, she's going to do it. And she did. She didn't, to my knowledge, didn't change anything, which can happen, of course. But she did the script as written. I got to know her during the animated series because I had this idea. I was in publicity, not promotion, but I came up with sort of a promotion idea. I went to my boss and I said, can we make Star Trek t-shirts for the animated series and give them to the press at the next press tour? And he said, yeah, we can do that. So I designed, with Filmation's help, I designed a shirt that had the Enterprise shooting its phasers, and it said Star Trek Lives, and on the back, the NBC logo on Saturday morning.
Right.
Well, Majel, I guess I either told her or she found out about it and said, I want to make the same shirt without the NBC logo for Lincoln Enterprises and sell them. So we went downtown LA to the garment district together to pick out shirts and produce them together. So she got hers to sell on Lincoln. I got mine to hand out to the press.
Oh, awesome.
So I knew her by that, And in fact, when Rod was born, it was during the animated series. So I took a photographer up to the house and got the first photos of Gene and Majel cradling baby Rod in their arms. And that got picked up everywhere, all over the country.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
You've said that your inspiration for the game was Tetris addiction, but
Yes.
the story was developed down a darker direction. How did you feel about the way it ended up after Brannon Braga's teleplay?
Well, there's a long story about how that all developed, and I'll give you I'll give you a shorter version, one that'll fit within the show.
Yeah.
So we pitched the idea of the game to Michael Piller, and it was so early that it would have been a season 4 episode if they had made it when we pitched it. We pitched it as Wesley's going away episode. We didn't know if they had, what their plans were. We knew, that he was leaving the series, that Will was going to leave. And so we thought, well, this could be his exit story. So Michael liked it enough to give us the go-ahead to write the story. We turned in our first draft of that, and he said, it's not quite there. So do this, this, and this, and it'll be good. So we followed his notes. We turned it back in, and he said, no, it's still not quite what I want. So here, do this, and this, and this, and then it's going to be good. So we did that, and he said, still not there. I don't think you're getting it. I'm going to have somebody else take a crack at it. So someone else wrote a draft, and he didn't like it. And so he had someone else write a draft of the story, and he didn't like it. And the game went into the dead file. Yeah. Now, I only heard this later on, but a year later, Rick Berman went to Michael and said, whatever happened to that story about the game that Fred and Susan came in with? And Michael said, oh, it's in the dead file. And Rick said, no, I like that one. We're going to do it. So it got reactivated a year later. And at that point, Brandon had been a Writers Guild intern. He was brand new. And they gave it to Brandon, which was fine. I mean, we had been separated from it by a year now. Yeah. And in fact, it became Wesley's coming back story. So much time had passed. The irony is that Brandon's draft kind of circled back to our original story. Oh, right. It had a lot of the elements that we went in with that they didn't like. So it was fine the way it worked out. You know, we get story credit along with Brandon, and he gets teleplay credit. It all worked out. We were fine with it. We were happy it got made. So
brilliant. Yeah. Speaking of, sorry,
one more thing about the game.
Yeah,
that was not our original title.
Oh, right. Okay.
I thought we had a great. We didn't pick the game. I thought we had a really great title, and I took it to Michael Peller, and he said, "We'll get sued." Our title was "Advance to Boardwalk." And Parker Brothers will sue us. And I said, no, Parker Brothers will love it. That Boardwalk is in the title. He wouldn't even ask. He wouldn't even try. Wow. So it became the game.
Oh,
okay.
It was more important to us that it got made than what the title was.
Of course, yeah.
I'll just say before Mike asks the next question, I actually, because it was very hard when Next Generation first came out to get hold of the tapes, and then later on when they did release them to purchase, I didn't have the disposable income to get them, so I kind of drifted away from Next Generation for a while. I came back because of that episode, the game,
really,
and it made me a complete. Oh. It's ironic, but it got me addicted to the show again.
Which was our plan from the very beginning. That's very. I love hearing that. That's great. Well, awesome. I'm glad I could help. Sorry I got you addicted, but I'm glad I could.
Oh no! It's been a ride.
Yeah, definitely.
For all of us, right? Yeah, it has.
Yeah.
It has.
Oh, we wouldn't change it. Definitely. Yeah. Awesome. Speaking of Brad and Braga, as we were, he's now working over at the Orville.
Yes.
Which I noticed that you tweet a lot about, and obviously you've already brought it up in this interview. So you're clearly a fan of the show, but I just wondered if you could give a little bit of an explanation maybe as to why, and more importantly, help me pitch it to my co-host here who still hasn't really delved into it yet.
Well, I love the Orville. It is, Seth MacFarlane has done an amazing job, and as much as I love the first 2 years, season 3,
I agree.
Yeah, just raised the bar so high.
Yep.
Obviously, Seth loves Star Trek, and this is his way of expressing. It's an homage. It's not a ripoff, right?
Yeah.
I absolutely love the Orville, and any Star Trek fan, DK would I think would love the Orville. There's so many callbacks to Star Trek. There was a scene where they assembled the whole crew, and it reminded me exactly of the scene where I was an extra in the motion picture. I thought, I don't know if it was meant to, but it really. And then, of course, not that he knew anything about my monument script, but seeing Kelly as a statue.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's not really a callback because nobody knows about that. But there are a lot of things in there, and season 3 is so brilliant.
Good. Yeah,
and of course, like everybody else, I'm down with Renew the Orville for season 4. I hope Hulu will do that.
Yeah, I think moving to a streaming platform and then not being restricted by network timing and things like that really did help the show, and it surprised me and it really got me emotional many a time in season 3. So I want to see that 4th season as well.
I think, and DK, I don't know, tell me if this is true for you. I think a lot of people didn't want to watch it because it was billed in the beginning as a comedy. Well, it's not a comedy.
Yeah.
There are comedic overtones, but so there were in Star Trek. It has gotten to some very serious, heavy topics. And my all-time favorite episode so far is Twice in a Lifetime. I won't spoil it for you, DK. But let's just say it's a time travel episode.
Yeah.
I think it's the best episode so far. And most of the episodes in season 3 look like motion pictures. Anyway, DK, please watch and let me know what you think.
Okay, I will do. As you say, I think the thing that's been putting me off is thinking that it is a comedy, or it was a comedy, and I've had obviously Mike and now you tell me it's not the case. I definitely give it a go.
I think it was a huge mistake for Fox to promote it that way.
Yep.
And yeah, season 1 had more comedy than. It's not like they don't have any now, but season 1 had a little more. But still, they did some really serious, excellent stories worthy of Star Trek.
Definitely. A friend of mine tweeted out just literally a couple of days ago about Twice in a Lifetime because they'd finally got to it. And I was like, oh, thank you for bringing up that trauma again. I was just over it, you know. But yeah, saying no more just in case DK does get to it eventually, hopefully.
I definitely will. I definitely will now.
Yeah. And do season 1 too quickly so you can get to season 3. I watched Twice in a Lifetime 3 times so far. Wow. And I'll probably watch it again.
Again, yeah. Wow. Brilliant.
Well, I'm going to ask, are there any other iterations of the Trek franchise, or indeed Orville, that you would like to write for? Any of the new shows, perhaps?
Well, probably the one I'd like to write for the most would be Strange New Worlds, because it's so close to the original. I think it would be very, very difficult to pitch to either. First of all, everything is staff written now, so there really is not an opportunity to go in, and that's just the way every series is now. Unlike Next Generation and Deep Space Nine, so there's not even the chance to go in and pitch. But when you have a season-long arc, you really can't go in with an idea and think it's going to fit in to what they're doing for an entire season. I think I could come up with Strange New Worlds ideas. I actually have a lot of Next Generation ideas that have never, gone beyond. And I found a lot of them as I'm going through my storage boxes, including one that I wrote based on all the information I was getting. Before I ever saw an episode, I wrote an episode just based on who I knew the characters were. And I found that the other day. So I reread it and I thought, yeah, the dialogue doesn't sound right because I had never experienced them speaking before.
I see, yeah.
I would change that. But the story idea, I think, would still work.
Yeah. Okay.
It could be an Orville episode, but I don't, it's staff written. So yeah. I don't think there's a chance of really even going into pitch.
Yeah, I'd love to see these stories someday. I'm surprised you haven't been approached by anybody to publish them as like lost, unmade Star Trek treasures or anything,
I have thought about, and it's been so long since I pitched anything, to Simon and Schuster. I did, I guess maybe more than 10 years ago, I was pitching ideas, and I don't even know who to pitch to now, but I think some of them maybe could be novels.
I'm going to post this interview out and maybe tag them on Twitter and say, come on, Simon and Schuster, definitely. Get on it. There's rich material here.
That would be great. Thank you.
Awesome. I think yours was the next question, DK, yeah? Oh, no, it was mine. Sorry.
It was yours.
Nope. Yeah. You've kind of already kind of done this for us, so we appreciate it. But do you have any other kind of special memories that stand out about anybody that worked with you on Star Trek? And again, you must have hundreds and hundreds of stories, and you've been asked this a lot. But
I do. I can give you my 2 absolute best ones.
Please, yeah, absolutely.
Definitely, yeah.
Okay. The first one takes place when I'm 19 years old, and season 3 of the original series is in first run. And a friend of mine tells me, oh, I went to the set. I had a set visit. I said, how did you do that? He said, oh, it turns out anybody can call. You just call and they'll give you an appointment time to come and visit.
Yeah.
I said, really? She said, yeah. So she went to see Day of the Dove being filmed.
Oh.
So I called and I got an appointment time, 4 p.m., December 31st, 1968. You can bring a friend. So I was 19. I had a friend who was 13, but he was a huge Star Trek fan. Ironically, also went on to write for Next Generation. Mark Zickery, who wrote the first episode and is known for a lot of things, right? So Mark was 13, and I said, your Christmas gift is I'm taking you to the set of Star Trek. So I was driving, 19, I could drive a car now, and I drove us over to Paramount. We went to the production office and a gentleman said, I'm going to walk you over to the set. He walked us over and said, it's 4:00, stay a half hour and then leave. And he took off. So we're two unchaperoned kids, but everybody knows that, we had this guy walked us over, and so they knew we were okay. But we were free to just stand there and watch them film. So a couple of things about that. First of all, it was New Year's Eve, right? And they wanted to, I think everybody wanted to go home and get ready for New Year's. Yeah. And at one point, someone who I realized later was an assistant director said, come on, people, last show of the season, let's get this done. And Majel, who I had not met yet, walked by me and said under her breath, last episode, period. And I went, not out loud, no, because nobody knew it was canceled yet. But I knew she and Gene were an item. So I thought, if she's saying it's over, it's over. So, and it was Turnabout Intruder. So it was the last episode of season 3, last episode ever. Mm-hmm. So they're filming in sick bay, and the only regular cast members on the stage that day were Majel, DeForest Kelley, and Shatner. And of course, he's filming scenes, playing a woman. And we didn't know what the plot was. We thought it was a little strange. We're trying to figure out what's going on. But 4:30 rolls around, and no one's really paying attention to us, or no one seemed to care if we stayed. So I said, let's just stay. So we stayed, and at 5:30 they wrapped for the day. So we're walking out. And we noticed on our way out, there's a little walled off section of the stage with a door, and we could see in mirrors and sinks. So it was a makeup area. And as we're walking out, DeForest Kelley walked in. And Mark says, let's go say hi. And I said, we've overstayed our welcome. We probably shouldn't bother them. We really should go. So we walk outside, and I think, wait a minute. Of course we should say hello to him. What, am I crazy? He said, come on, Mark, we're going in. So we walk back in, and we go to the doorway. He's leaning over the sink, washing his face, and he looks up, and it is not DeForest Kelley, who must have walked in and walked out. It's Shatner. And he looks up at us, soap is dripping down his face. He's not wearing his toupee. And he sees two kids standing in the doorway, and he says to us, I'm not going to try to imitate him, but his words were, would you get out? Would you get out of the makeup room? So we left. But we were unscarred. We just thought, well, that was an adventure. It didn't bother us. And I'm still telling the story almost 60 years later. So
yeah, that's brilliant. Awesome.
My second best story took place a few months earlier. Somehow I got the home address of Nichelle Nichols. So I said to my friends, here's what we're going to do. We're going to mock up a petition to keep Star Trek on the air. And we're going to go to the house next to her on either side. And then we're going to go to her house. Like, we don't know who lives there. We're just going through the neighborhood, collecting petitions to keep Star Trek on the air. So we go, and two of us walk up to the door, ring the bell. It's about 6 o'clock at night, but it was dark out, so I guess it was winter. And the door opens, and a tall black guy without a shirt on answers the door, and I think to myself, we've interrupted something. I don't know if we did, but... He said, hello. I said, hi, don't want to bother you, but we're going through your neighborhood tonight with petitions to keep Star Trek on the air. And he said, really? And I said, yeah, would you sign? He said, yeah, I'll sign. So he signs. He says, do you want another signature? Now, I never let on that I knew who lived there. I said, oh, yeah, it'd be great. So he closed the door. He goes off. He comes back, opens the door, hands us the thing, and that's it. Well, yeah, of course. So she signed it. Now, 25 years later, I'm reading an interview that Nichelle did for the Star Trek Fan Club magazine. And in the interview, she says the show was so popular, people actually came through my neighborhood with petitions to keep it on the air. I thought, oh my God, I never told her because I knew her at this point.
Yeah.
It never occurred to me to say anything. It was something, I never thought about it. 3 months later, Susan and I went to the theater to see this play with Mark Leonard and Walter Koenig as Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn. And Nichelle and George are sitting right in front of us. And Mark Zickery and his wife are sitting on my left. It's been so many years that he's now an adult and he's married. So I said, Nichelle, I read your interview in the Fan Club magazine. Oh, did you like it? Yeah, it was really good. By the way, that was me who came to your door with the petition, and we were not going through your neighborhood. I don't remember how, but I got your home address somehow. And Mark says, remember, my uncle was an agent. I gave it to you, which I had no memory of.
Okay.
Total full circle moment. And Nichelle thought it was the funniest thing she ever heard because she had this belief for 25 years that people were going through her neighborhood. So those are my two best Star Trek stories.
That's fantastic. I love those.
Thank you.
You mentioned earlier you were on set as an extra in Star Trek The Motion Picture.
Yes.
How did that come about, and how did it feel to be back with the crew of the Enterprise long after everyone thought it had ended for good?
Well, it was pretty amazing to be there. I mean, it was one of those unbelievable moments where you just want to pinch yourself that it's happening and you're there. So at this point, it was October of 78. The film didn't come out till December of 79, but they'd been filming. And Susan had worked for Gene for about 4 years at this point. And she called me up one day and said, listen, Gene's inviting you and me to be extras in the motion picture. She said, they're going to be auditioning people. We don't have to audition. But if you know anybody who wants to do this, they can come and audition. So I invited 3 of my friends, and 2 of them got in, 1 didn't. We were sort of off to the side, and everybody else lined up in 2 lines. And Robert Wise himself went down the lines and picked the extras he wanted. And then they filled in. So he probably came up with about 100 extras that night. And then they brought another 200 in from the Screen Extras Guild. They had to get dispensation from the Screen Extras Guild for us to be there, but the Screen Extras Guild okayed it. So there we were it was one day. A few people came back the second day, but most of us were just there for one day. There's a little story about that, actually. So when that night of auditions, they gave us all appointment times to come back and get fitted for shoes. Why only shoes, I don't know, and not the whole uniform, but shoes. And I had this job at NBC, and the time they gave me was going to be a conflict for me. So I traded times with someone. Now it's the day of filming, and all my friends are way down front. So I go stand way down front with them, and someone comes over to me and says, sorry, you can't stand here. You've got the wrong shoes. Because the front people, they're going to see their shoes. So I did it. I sabotaged myself. So I'm in the back on the left. But if you freeze frame me in 4K, I can find myself.
Yeah, it's a little bit surreal actually, because I literally just saw the new version of the motion picture a few days ago at a cinema. So I did just I remember you pointing out where you were on Twitter at one point, and so I was looking during the rec deck scene to see if I could spot you against the wall. But yeah, it was a breathtaking experience, and I just wanted to say, first of all, kudos for serving on the best looking ship in the franchise, because I love that refitted Enterprise.
It was pretty good. Yeah. It was very, very exciting to be there. And just how lucky was I to be a part of that,
Definitely, absolutely. And did Yeah, the only question I had about that was that obviously there's been a lot documented about that it was a somewhat tumultuous shoot, not because of behavior or anything, but more that they were kind of writing the script as they went and stuff like that. Did you get any sense of that, or was the atmosphere just...
we couldn't tell that, not on that one day anyway. You know, they put us all in position, and then the cast came in and did all their lines. As far as we could tell, we couldn't tell.
Yeah,
but
fair enough.
Really, it's just that little scene out of a 2-hour movie. So
yeah, definitely.
I just wish they had taken more time circling the Enterprise. I actually didn't mind that, but I know
we were saying the other day we could watch that go on for another 20 minutes, 30 minutes.
Me too.
Yep. It looked great on the big screen, I think.
Yeah. Your next generation stories. Obviously, you've mentioned Susan Sackett. You wrote the stories with her. What was the process like of sharing scripting duties with another person?
So up until that point, I had pretty much written everything I'd written by myself. But we decided to team up, like I said, because we had both failed at on our own. So we thought, let's try it together. She literally lived 5 minutes from my house. So I'd go over to her house. She'd bake something, or we'd have dinner or lunch. And I sometimes took a nap in the middle of writing. And we just would talk. We'd talk about ideas and see what came up. And somehow out of that, we came up with what became Past Lives. And we just kept doing that. Like when it was time to go back in and meet with Michael and the whole writing staff, we just had jam sessions and came up with 12 ideas. So it was back and forth, definitely collaborative. I enjoyed the process, nothing, even though I had written everything by myself up to that point, didn't mind writing with a partner. When it came to the actual script, which is, way after the story, the oral pitch and the story, and then finally, if you're going to write the script, you write the script. We divided it up. So I wrote some scenes, she wrote some scenes, and then we would get together and say, well, this worked or this doesn't work. And
yeah,
but it was a good process. We're still friends after all these years. I go visit her a couple times a year.
Oh, lovely. Awesome.
Oh, awesome. At least you didn't butt heads to the point where you fell out.
Exactly, which happens sometimes, but no. It's been a solid friendship for, I won't say how many decades, but I guess I kind of gave that away already.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, that's good to know. Good friends. Awesome. Well, first of all, before I ask my next question, do let us know if we're keeping you too long. I know it's very, very late there, so
it's fine. No. You can go as long as you want.
Awesome.
Yeah, maybe not more than 24 hours, but
well, my next question was just going to be about. I was going to ask if you were a fan of the newer Star Trek shows, but you've already said that you were. So it was just going to be: do you have any favorite particular series? Which I suppose Strange New Worlds would probably be that one. And
it is. It is Strange New Worlds. It's just brilliant, and the season finale.
Yeah.
Oh Lord, that was incredible.
Yeah,
I'm sure like you both seen it, right?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so I figured, but I wanted to make sure. Of course, you probably did the same thing. I had to go watch Balance of Terror again afterwards.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I recognized all of the lines off by heart anyway. But anytime there was the same dialogue, I was like, yes, I know. But yeah,
even the look, like when they go to, when they discover what the Romulans look like, that just matched the shots and then the close up, the zooming in on the ear. It was brilliant. It was wonderful.
It was so good. And other than potentially Robert April, which there may be a conflict of interest, do you have any other favorite characters from any of the newer shows?
Well, I think Anson Mount as Pike is doing an amazing job. No, there isn't a captain I don't like, but he is way up there, in the ranking of, if you had to rank all the captains.
Yeah.
I love what they've done with Uhura and Nurse Chapel, and I love their first meeting. when they introduce themselves to each other. Obviously, I love, Kirk and Spock meeting for the first time, and they're just doing so many great things. I'm sure they're having an incredible amount of fun harking back, and I'm sure we're going to get much more of that, in season 2, which is already filmed. So let's get it on the air.
Yeah,
absolutely. I didn't have this written down, but I'm just curious about your thoughts. Are you excited for the Lower Decks crossover episode in live action? I've heard they've just filmed it, so it's in the can.
I read a little bit about it, where we're going to see, them in live action.
Yeah.
Jack Quaid, right? And
Tony Newsom, yeah.
So I think that sounds brilliant. So
yeah,
I'm looking forward to it. I don't quite know what to expect. That somehow we'll see animated. Do you remember the movie Enchanted with Amy Adams? It's a Disney movie.
Yeah.
Off animation, and when she falls into our world, she's human.
Yeah.
So it made me think of that. If we're going to see them as
that's a point. Yeah.
And
that would be kind of cool.
Yeah. Somehow obviously there's going to be some time travel involved.
That'd have to be.
So it sounds like it's going to be great and gives Lower Decks more attention, which honestly has surprised me, as has Prodigy, how much I mentioned it, but a real surprise how fantastic they both turned out to be.
I completely agree. Yeah, awesome.
Definitely. I mean, following on from that, do you have an overall favorite character, both as a fan or as someone that you've written for?
I would have to say Spock. Starting back with the original series, I identify with him because growing up, not so much now, but growing up, I felt like an outsider in many ways,
Yeah.
And so I had totally identified. I mean, I wasn't unemotional, but I could definitely identify with Spock.
Yeah,
right.
I have a similar experience, and I've always said that I identified with Spock, and then it's a bit personal, so forgive me, but I was diagnosed with autism just about a year and a half ago. And once that happened, there was a kind of a light bulb moment of like, oh, that's why I had trouble understanding emotions and stuff, and that's why I related to a man who was always sort of like, I'm puzzled by this human emotion of yours,
Sure.
So yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of us can identify with him.
Yeah. So you... we've kind of talked enough about Star Trek, I think, now, but it's only a small part of a massive, gargantuan and impressive career, obviously. And thank you for sending me the letter pages from the Marvel and DC comics that you sent. The Spider-Man one in particular was like a kind of holy grail to me because Superman and Spider-Man are my two number one all-time guys. So that was special. Do you still follow Marvel and DC, and do you have any particular favorite comics from over the years?
Well, I do have some favorites, which I'll tell you, but I don't follow them as like I used to. For a long time, I would go to the DC app every week and look at all the new issues coming out, so I knew what the plots were and what the stories were, even though I wasn't reading them. And Green Lantern has always been a particular favorite, so I'm really glad the HBO Max series is still a go so far.
Yeah, so far.
I waited 50 years for a Green Lantern movie, and just my luck, it wasn't any good. But I don't think it was as terrible as people say, but it wasn't great.
I don't think so
either. But I was really looking forward to that movie, and hopefully we will see the Flash movie, but who knows? Anyway, so Green Lantern's a favorite. Justice League. I was definitely there in the Silver Age. So when they were bringing back Flash and Green Lantern, and Flash of Two Worlds and Crisis on Infinite Earths, and so when I was 14, so I was writing these letters to the editor when I was 12 and 13. When I was 14, my parents, who were from the East Coast, were making their first trip back to the East Coast since moving to LA. So I got to go to New York and Boston with them. So I wrote to all the editors at DC, and I wrote to Stan Lee and said, I'm going to be in New York and I would love to meet with you. And they both said yes. And so I spent a day at DC just being shuttled from editor to editor, having, some short meetings. And then I went over to Marvel, and I didn't know at the time that Stan didn't come out to meet the fans. His assistant Flo did. And she became kind of legendary. But back then I had no idea. And she sent me off to meet Steve Ditko in his studio. I thought writing for DC was going to be my career. And then I got into music, and comics kind of fell by the wayside.
Right.
Not playing music, but following music and the charts and all of that. So, yeah, but no, I feel very partial, to DC. And I like Marvel too.
Yeah. Cool.
How does it feel to see the heroes that you grew up with following in some books to now take their place center stage on the big screen? Have you got any favorite movies that have particularly given you that same feeling you had when reading the books? And are there any heroes or teams that you'd love to see on the big screen that haven't appeared as yet?
For some odd reason, I think Challengers of the Unknown would make a great TV series or film. But
actually.
And I was actually thinking before they announced it that Strange Adventures would make a great anthology series.
Yeah.
Well, it's come and gone, but that was a thought in my head too. Greg Berlanti has the lock on it, and I love a lot of the stuff that he's done. I really do. So and movie wise, I thought the first Wonder Woman movie was really good.
Yeah.
Did not care for Justice League until I saw the Snyder Cut, and then I appreciated it a lot more. Did not care for Man of Steel. Did not care for Batman versus Superman. I liked Aquaman.
Yeah.
I wanted to like Green Lantern more than I did. Like Shazam. Looking forward to Black Adam. Who else would I like on the screen? Hawkman. Hawkman would be interesting to me. I know he's been like a side character in Smallville and,
Legends of Tomorrow as well, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. But I'd like to see something with Hawkman.
Let's hope he's done justice in Black Adam, because I think Aldous Hodge is a great actor, so fingers crossed.
Yeah, it would be. Hopefully, I don't know, right now it seems like a really rough time for DC movies, even comic books. There's all these rumors going around about the new owners of, Warner Brothers.
Yeah.
What they're going to do to DC Comics. So hopefully they're not, they're wrong. I've always been partial to Dr. Fate. I don't know, we got Doctor Strange movies, but maybe a Dr. Fate movie would be good.
Awesome.
Yeah, those are the main ones I'd like to see.
That's great. So you've already mentioned that you went to the DC and the Marvel offices, and you've mentioned again that you met Steve Ditko. Again, that's like sacred ground to me, so I just have to ask, what was he like, and what was the experience like?
I wish I could remember more of it. I mean, he was generous of his time. I was there for about an hour. He showed me how he worked. He showed me his studio. I can't say that I really got to know him, but even to have that 1 hour was fantastic. And to be willing to have a fan come over and spend time, I thought, I'm sure he's busy, but that was incredibly generous of him. That's my memory.
Brilliant. Awesome. DK, right. What's the next question?
Yeah. Mike was gracious enough to show me a couple of the letters that you sent to him.
Right.
And I was interested to see the particular one to Metal Men, because I've always been a fan of that group. So it led me to wonder, are there any lesser known, well, in today's standards, lesser known Marvel or DC heroes that stand out to you as being inspirational?
Well, I was a big fan of Adam Strange, and which is why I ripped him off for my story. If I had published them, they probably would have sued me for being too close to Adam Strange. But which is actually another project I think could make an excellent TV series, if not.
Yeah, they were touching on it a little bit in Krypton. I don't know if you ever saw that, and I was excited to see where that might go. Yeah,
I did. Yeah, a different take on Adam Strange, but still. Of course, we did get to see Rip Hunter in Legends of Tomorrow until they got rid of him. always liked Black Canary, and we've seen her in several different,
Yeah,
versions now, and still rumors of maybe a series or something. Growing up, I was reading Green Arrow and Aquaman, and we certainly had a good run of Arrow, and I hope Aquaman 2 is, as good as or better than Aquaman 1, which I liked a lot.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of any other. Growing up, the original Superboy, because I was a boy, and so I could really identify. In fact, I used to have dreams that I was Superboy and I was flying and having adventures. So obviously, Superboy today is different than that original run. And of course, we've got Superman's sons and Superman and Lois. So. But I'm having a good thought. I never knew if it was Submariner or Submariner, but either way, that was a character I liked a lot growing up.
Yeah.
I was there when I was buying comic books when they introduced Spider-Man and Amazing Fantasy and Thor and Journey.
Amazing to me.
So I was buying all of those, and I was into Fantastic Four. Well, you saw the, I had a letter in number 9, although I didn't send that one to you. Someday I'll find it.
Fair enough. Do you have any favorite runs on any particular comics that have meant something to you over the years that you could maybe say, people should check out this particular?
Well, although I'd already stopped my insane collecting, my obsessive collecting, the Green Lantern, Green Arrow run was really, I thought, a milestone. Oh, I love Watchmen.
Yeah.
And I really love the series, although it was, of course, a different take. I thought the series was brilliant. I thought episode 8 of 9 was one of the best hours of television I've ever seen, where where she first meets Dr. Manhattan.
Definitely.
Yeah, but Watchmen to me is a real classic. I used to love both Jimmy Olsen and Lois Lane when they had their own books. Really, really enjoyed that.
Wow, that's amazing.
I'm sure there's more that I'm thinking of at the moment.
You and I share remarkably similar taste, because I've always said that, like I said, Superman and the supporting cast are favorites of mine, and I've long said that Watchmen is my second favorite book of all time, after The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. If you're curious what the first was.
Well, I love that too. I just today found the soundtrack CD.
Oh, awesome.
I'm going through my boxes, so I filed that away today under H.
Awesome. That feeds quite nicely into my next question, which was that I was surprised how much of what I would think of as particularly British culture you're aware of and kind of lived in. And I wondered if you have any sort of have you ever visited our fair isle, and do you have any pleasant memories about Britain or its people, present company excluded, of course?
Well, no, let's include you guys. Very much so. So my first trip to London was when I was 25 years old, and I was taking a vacation from NBC, and I went to London, Paris, and Amsterdam. Didn't know a soul in any of those places. Went by myself, met people. In fact, I met someone in 1974 who's still a friend today. And when I quit my job at NBC in 1982 for a lot of reasons, but one was I wanted to live in London. And I had a roommate who was getting married. And I said to her, look, normally you'd move out because it was my house and she was renting a room. I said, but what if you and your husband continue to live here and I take off and go to London for a while? And so she said, well, yeah, that would be great. I had a dog. She had a dog. I didn't want to, my dog needed to be taken care of. And also I didn't want to move all my stuff out of the house. So that's what happened. I moved to London in October of 1982, and I came home in January of 84. And my friend had are you London-based, or where are you?
I'm in the northeast, so I'm in it's kind of close to Newcastle upon Tyne, if you know that. So.
I know.
I'm originally from the north, but I'm actually living at the moment in Barcelona in Spain. Yeah. So.
Oh, been there very briefly twice and loved it. Have you tried tapas? No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. So I loved living there. I really loved Britain. And also, when I was living there, it was in '83. That was my first opportunity to watch the Eurovision Song Contest. So that was great. I had known about it for years, but I'd never seen it until I lived in London. So I had, 15 months there. I didn't have a plan when I went, except I rented a room in my friend's house in Barons Court. So I was right on the Piccadilly and District lines. So I could get around really easily. And I ended up doing publicity for American television shows that were filming in England. And that kept me going for, almost the full time I was there. And then it just felt like it was time to go home. I missed my dog. My parents were still alive. I had this house. So I went home. And that's when I started writing full time, right after I got back from London. And then in 1995, I was working for Billboard, among other things. And Billboard sent me to London for half a year. They were launching a UK magazine, and they wanted me to help with the launch. So I had 6 more months, and my friend still had a room for rent. So I lived back in Barons Court again. So I have a lot of from living there. I have a lot of friends in London, and I passed through in May. At the end of May, I was in Stockholm for a week, and I stopped in London on the way home so I could see the ABBA show.
Ah, of course, yeah.
Which was
what
brilliant.
do you think to it?
I loved it. Are you going to go? Or?
I'm a fan. I am wanting to go. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I just read today they're going to. Well, I interviewed Benny, and he told me that in 4 years they have to tear down the arena because it's going to be public housing. And I read today that they've confirmed the show's going to run through 2026.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
So I guess
it's doing very well then.
Yeah. But do go back for a visit, and I hope you both get to see it. So I was in London very, very briefly, but it was great to be back.
Oh, fantastic.
So I love the UK. And, Ab Fab and Faulty Towers and Father Ted and Doctor Who. I'm all in.
Oh, thank you.
Oh.
Yes, we're big Doctor Who fans.
I never saw Doctor Who until they brought it back in the 2000s. I had just never seen it before, but became a massive fan once it was back.
Brilliant.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Favorite episode of Doctor Who?
All time, probably. I was going to say Ark in Space or City of Death, the Tom Baker era, if you've gone back that far.
Well, how about just from the new era?
The new ones.
Because I have one.
Blink or
yes,
Silence
that's my favorite. Blink.
Oh,
fair enough.
Yeah. I've watched it maybe 15 times.
Oh, nice. Awesome. I was going to say Human Nature and Family of Blood is usually my go-to, just because I'm a sucker for those emotional sci-fi stories, as we touched on with the Orville and things like that. So the kind of tragedy of the Doctor being made human and then having to give that up to return to his life and give up the woman he loved and everything. So, big fan of melodrama.
Oh, me too. There have been a lot of great episodes, but Blake really stands out for me.
I was going to ask, you briefly touched upon it about your time in the UK, but I was going to ask what originally brought the Eurovision to your attention, and how important a role do you feel it plays in musical culture? And have you had any, sorry, it's a long question, have you had any personal highlights in following over the years?
Well, yes. I'll try to pick out just a few. But so I went to work in a record store in Culver City, where I grew up, just a mom and pop shop, not a big chain, when I was 15. And they got Billboard delivered, subscribed to Billboard. So I would see every year just a little tiny story about so-and-so wins the Eurovision Song Contest. That's where I first heard about it. And in fact, that when I was 16, my aunt went to Europe for the first time, and she said, "Is there anything I can get you?" And I said, "Yes, I want a single of Poupée de Cire, Poupée de Sang, because it won the Eurovision Song Contest," and she brought it back.
Okay.
Now, I never saw it until 83. But I was, I definitely, well, of course, the first time I went to London, I mentioned was 1974. It was mid-April. And when I got there, the number one song was Waterloo, because it was just 2 weeks later. Why didn't I go 2 weeks earlier and try to go to Eurovision? But I didn't know enough about it to do that. So I knew that ABBA won, and I loved ABBA right from Waterloo. And then after I saw the 83 contest, I didn't see it again until 93, when I figured out I should have somebody video it for me. My friend had worked at a music publisher in LA, and they had a PAL machine. So I thought I could go over to his office and watch Eurovision if I get a tape. So that's how I saw the 93 contest and 94. And while I was watching the 94 contest, I thought, wait a minute, I'm a journalist. I could go to this. I could cover it for Billboard. So in 94, I decided that in 95, I was going to go to Eurovision. What I didn't know is that in February of 95, Billboard sent me to London. So first I covered the Great British Song Contest with Jonathan King picking the songs, and there were five songs that were in contention. And I interviewed all 5 artists and did stories for our British magazine. And then I said to my editor, I want to actually go to Dublin and cover Eurovision. She said, good, go. You got the assignment. So I went to Dublin to the Point Theatre, and it was 1995, and saw my first Eurovision. And Norway won. So in 96, I went to Oslo, and Ireland won again. I just kept going. I went to 12 of them. And I have so many great stories and memories. So let me just pick a couple to tell you. So in 97, back in Dublin, and there's too many delegations to all be in one hotel, but I was in a hotel where there were 3 or 4 delegations, including Malta. And so one night after rehearsals, I'm in the lobby, which was the lobby bar, and I'm sitting talking with the delegation from Malta. And after a couple hours of chat, they say to me, "We'd like to invite you to be a judge for our national final next year, because we have 7 judges, 2 are from Malta, and 5 are international. So would you be interested in doing that?" I said, "Would I?" Yeah. And they followed through. And I went to Malta in 98, and I was one of 7 judges, and there was no televoting at that point. It was just the 7 of us deciding I think there were 32 entries, who was going to go to Eurovision. So we watched all the performances. We went upstairs to a private room and deliberated, and we all pretty much agreed on one act, one particular artist and song. And she went to Eurovision in 98. Now, I went to 98 and sat with the Maltese delegation in the venue, in the arena in Birmingham, because Katrina and the Waves had won the year before, which I was there for. In fact, when I went to judge, Katrina and the Waves were the special guest. We were old friends by now from Eurovision, so we got to hang out in Malta anyway. So now it's 1998, and the singer was Chiara. The song was The One That I Love, and the voting is taking place. I'm sitting with the Maltese delegation in the hall, and across the aisle from us was Israel, and sitting next to us was Finland. They were seated in the same order they were performing. That's just how it turned out.
Yeah.
So with one country left to vote, the score was Israel had 166 points, and Malta had 166 points. It was a tie. And there's only one country left to report their vote. And the country was the former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia. So what we all knew was, or thought, because every country but one had given points to Israel, and every country but one other had given points to Malta. So it was pretty certain that whichever country you heard first, the other country was going to get more points, and they were going to win. So you could hear a pin drop in the auditorium. The tension was just... So they give back then they gave their 1, their 2, their 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 points, Israel. And all the Israelis sank into their seats. They were standing waving their flags. They're defeated. They're in their seat. They're crushed. And people started shouting at us, "You've won! You've won!" The Finnish people are all yelling in their delegation. They're all yelling, "You've won!" And I'm going, "Oh my God, I helped pick the song and they're going to win for the first time ever. I can't believe it." 10 points, United Kingdom. "You've won! You've won!"
Oh.
12 points, Croatia. 0 for Malta. Israel won. Of course, it was Donna International with Diva.
Of course,
Yeah.
You know, yeah. And the 10 points pushed the UK into second place. Amani, where are you now? Amani. And so Malta ended up third, which was still at that time tied their best score ever. But for a few minutes there, I thought, I'm going to Malta next year because I helped pick their song. They're going to win. That's going to be
nice.
It was surreal.
Awesome.
Do you have time for my other Eurovisions?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, definitely.
I have a lot of them. But so in 2000, we're in Stockholm. And, there's 2 stories I should tell you. Anyway, we're in Stockholm, and at the Friday, so, you know, there's a Friday afternoon dress rehearsal, Friday night dress, Saturday afternoon, and then live show. Friday afternoon is the first rehearsal with the whole run of show. And Denmark just gets huge applause. Now, normally, Sweden would get the biggest applause because we're in Sweden. But this went through the roof for Denmark, and I thought, they're going to win. And same thing happened that night and the next afternoon. So at the winners' press conference, my question to the brothers Olsen was, at what moment during this week did you first think you were going to win? And I thought they were going to say Friday afternoon when the crowd went wild. But that wasn't what they said. They said, well, at our party Wednesday night, when Billboard said they liked our song, we thought we're going to win. I thought, I wasn't expecting that. So I stayed in touch with them for quite a while after. So 1995, I was a big fan of Stock, Aitken, and Waterman.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
In 95, a friend of mine was their publicist for Stock, Aitken. Waterman was out of the picture at that point. And so I would go over and have lunch with him. And on May 10th, 1995, I went to have lunch with them. When we came back from lunch, that's when I would chat with Mike and Matt. And they introduced me to an artist who happened to be in the office that day, Nikki French. And at that moment, Total Eclipse of the Heart was just going up the American chart. It was number 16 that day.
Yeah.
And it was a Wednesday, which was chart day. But because of the time difference, I was going to get the chart at midnight. So I said, Nikki, if you want, I'll call you at home and tell you where you went from 16 to, where. She said, yeah, that would be great, please. So she gave me her phone number. I go to the office, and at midnight, the chart comes through on the fax machine. I called her up and I said, Nikki, you are top 10 in America. She went from 16 to 8.
Awesome.
And she screamed and she was so happy. she ultimately peaked at number 2 in America.
Oh, that's great.
So flash forward 5 years to the day. It's May 10th, 2000, which is the first Monday of Eurovision week. And Nikki rehearses and has her press conference. Now we had stayed in touch, so we were friends and in emailing and all that. And so I set up to ask my question, and I said, Nikki, we met 5 years ago today. And here's my question. I don't remember what I asked her, but so that was another sort of full circle moment.
That's brilliant.
Fantastic.
And I had a lot of fun. 1998. The song I love Kiara's song, but my favorite song was Belgium.
Right.
Dewey by Melanie Cole. And at the opening night ceremony is when you can mingle with everybody. So I met her and I said, I just want you to know that your song is my favorite song this year. A few minutes later, some of the delegation from Belgium came over to me, and they didn't say this in a mean way or an accusing way, although it'll sound like it. They said, we just wanted to ask you, you told Melanie that was, it's your favorite song. I said, I did. And they said, we were just curious, do you say that to everybody?
Right.
And I said, no, her song is my favorite this year. It's actually my second favorite Eurovision song of all time, but wow. I didn't know that then. I needed more perspective.
Okay. What's your favorite is, yeah.
I thought you would ask that. It's the first year I went, 95, Cyprus, Alex Panay, Steve Fautier, and I met Alex at the after party, and we've actually been friends ever since too. Like I just interviewed him for a Billboard story about Ukraine and Russia in Eurovision and their history together, because in 2000 Alex was back performing again with a woman as a duo. And there was a hotel right next to the arena. And one afternoon I was sitting in the lobby, and Alex and the delegation from Cyprus was there. And the Turkish delegation was also staying in the hotel, and they were there. Well, Turkey and Cyprus, kind of a conflict there because of the invasion of, Well, they all started playing music together and ended up embracing each other. And it was just a moment. And there were only maybe 10 outsiders outside of those two delegations observing this. So in my story about Ukraine and Russia, I referenced that other political, times in Eurovision, which is really not supposed to be non-political. I mean, but this was a good thing that this was, two delegations coming together despite any differences that their governments had.
Well, this is a potentially really big question, but obviously you, as you've touched on, you're a big music fan. You write a lot on music. You've made a ton of Spotify playlists that I've had a quick chance to check out. So as somebody with a deep love of music, sorry to put you on the spot, but do you have 3 favorite sort of albums of all time and 3 favorite gigs that you've ever been to?
Okay, good question. I have not prepared an answer for it, but let's see. My all-time favorite album is Tapestry, Carole King.
Right, okay.
I interviewed her when I was in college for same paper that I interviewed Gene Roddenberry for, but, a few years later. And at the time, she was recording an album over at A&M in Hollywood. And that's where we did the interview, not in the studio, but in an office. And when the album came out, it was Tapestry. I interviewed her before Tapestry because I liked her songwriting. So that is my favorite album of all time. Number 2 is Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band.
Standard.
And number 3 is a tie between the Visitors, Voulez-Vous, and Super Trooper albums.
Nice.
But then Dusty and Memphis would be in my top 5 as well.
Brilliant. Oh, these are all good choices. Excellent.
Yeah.
And then 5th would probably be a Kate Bush album. Maybe The Kick Inside or Hounds of Love.
Yeah.
Even before Stranger Things, I was a Kate Bush fan, starting with Wuthering Heights. So
and what about gigs that you've been to? Did you have any
gigs? So, one would be ABBA's live North American tour in 1979. I saw that. Another would be in 1964. there was a concert at the Santa Monica Civic Auditorium. It was videotaped and released in theaters as a motion picture, even though they videoed it, which was very unusual at the time. Do you know what it is? Or
No.
Okay. So here's who was on the bill: Chuck Berry, Marvin Gaye, Smokey and the Miracles, the Supremes, the Beach Boys, the Rolling Stones, James Brown, Billy J. Kramer and the Dakotas, Jerry and the Pacemakers, Leslie Gore, and it was hosted by Jan and Dean. So each act did about 3 songs, and I was in the audience. I got a ticket through my local radio station, went with 2 friends who were slightly older than me, and they could drive. And they started videotaping at 6 p.m. And they started videotaping at 6 p.m. And at 1 a.m., they came out and said, a lot of your parents are calling. So if you think your parents are worried and want you home, you should probably leave. Well, we hadn't seen the Rolling Stones or James Brown yet. Nobody left. So that was just the gig of a lifetime. Now, unfortunately, the first night, they taped the whole show one night and the following night. The night I went, only one act didn't appear, and that was the Supremes, who were my favorite act of all time. Now they're number 2 to ABBA. So I didn't see them till like 3 years later. But anyway, that would be a favorite gig. You know, I've seen Carole King live. Oh, I went. You saw the Rocket Man movie, the Elton John bio?
Yeah.
Do you remember he made a real breakthrough in America by appearing at the Troubadour in Los Angeles? I was there. I was,
oh, wow.
Yeah, I was a college journalist, so I got invited. And so those would be, you know, I saw Queen live. I saw ELO live. Roxy Music I saw live.
Queen live
they're coming back to LA. They're doing their farewell tour. And I'm going because I become friends with Phil Manzanera, the guitarist.
Oh, wow.
The last 7 years, we've been in Sweden at the same time for the same event. And so we've been hanging out in Sweden every year. So he invited me to come see Roxy Music.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah. So, you know, I was born at the right time. I got to see a lot of that. The Beatles at the Hollywood Bowl. How can I forget that?
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Whoa. Oh, wow. Okay.
I mean, you are such an expert with regards to music.
Sorry, I had to show you something.
Oh, go for it.
I've been finding things in storage.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
I found this today.
That is amazing.
1964. I couldn't get a ticket for the Hollywood Bowl. I did go in 65, but I was able to get tickets for their 2 Las Vegas shows, one at 4 o'clock and one at 9 o'clock. And I had a cousin who lived in Vegas. So she got tickets, and we went to see the Beatles. I found the photo today.
Talk about a life well lived. That's brilliant.
I feel very fortunate.
Yeah,
definitely.
for sure.
Do you ever find yourself, when you meet someone, however inadvertently, judging others on their musical taste? Did they ever say, "Oh, I like this group," and you think, "Oh"? Or
in general, I am so seriously not a judgmental person. I'm really not. It's a lesson I learned back in my early 30s about being judgmental or not, and I went with not.
Yeah.
Up to that point, but so no. It doesn't mean I agree with everybody's taste, but it's a big wide world. I have very eclectic taste. I mean, I wrote for 10 years in a row. I wrote a show for the Academy of Country Music, so I got to know country music and the artist really well over a 10-year period. I like R&B. I like pop. I like Broadway. I feel ignorant for saying so. I'm not really into classical music, even though I probably would enjoy it. Right. Not that I never listen to it, but I don't know it that well.
Yeah.
I'm not into death metal.
Mm.
Other than that, I kind of like a little bit of everything.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
Cool.
My next question is kind of music based as well. Our good friend Will Templar, who's been on both of our podcasts, is a huge fan of the Jacksons, and you literally wrote the book on them with the unique access. I just had to ask. He'll kill me if I don't ask. What would they like, and do you have any kind of maybe unheard stories from meeting them?
I don't know about. Let me think about the unheard stories. But so what happened was, a friend of mine from London, named Adam White, who worked at Billboard for many years. In 2016, he wrote what I would say is the most authoritative book on Motown. And Adam is just a massive Motown fan, so he was the perfect person to write it. And it had a British publisher. The book came out all over the world. Well, the Jacksons saw that book, and they called the publisher and said, our 50th anniversary is coming up, and we'd like to do a book. And the publisher said, yes. And then Adam went to the publisher and said, you should ask Fred to write it. And they did. So that's how it came about. And then I spent 3 days with Marlon, 3 days with Tito, and 3 days with Jackie. Jermaine elected not to be a part of it, although I wrote about him in the book, but he didn't want to be interviewed or anything like that. As the other three told me, we love him, but that's Jermaine. So. Yeah, right. And of course, Michael had already passed at that time. They were very different from each other, but they were all incredibly humble, incredibly nice, honest with me. It was their book, so they wanted to tell their stories. I enjoyed meeting all three, but I think the one I'm closest to is Jackie. But they were all great, and I was just really happy. The book was going to depend on what they were willing to talk about in their interviews. And they're very open and honest. And it was a great project to work on. I don't know that I have any untold stories because I told them all in the book.
Oh, that's good. Well, as soon as I mentioned the book to him, when I mentioned I was interviewing you, he said that he wasn't aware that it existed and immediately went and ordered it. So I've made you a sale.
There's another 20 cents in my pocket. Thank you.
There we go.
I'm actually glad that it's, it did sell pretty well.
Yeah, definitely.
And I thought the art direction, which I had nothing to do with, was incredible. The photos came from the brothers. They were their personal photos. So, there are over 1,000 photos in the book. And so I wrote the text and the captions. The captions took almost as long as the book itself. But I loved working on them. I loved working with them. They were really great.
That's good. Awesome.
Nice one. Looking back on everything you've worked on over your career, do you feel that you've accomplished everything that you set out to do, or is there something you would still like to do that you haven't got around to as yet? And what are you most proud of?
Well, I think I'm most proud of Star Trek. And I wrote a lot of music shows, a lot of variety shows, and enjoyed them all, and happy with how they all turned out. Some were better than others, but Star Trek to me is, I had a burning passion to write for Star Trek that started building within me when I watched the original series. So
yeah,
through whatever twist of fate it took, I got to do it. So that was brilliant. That's it for me. Yeah, there are things. I've written a couple of movie scripts. I don't know that they're ever going to get made, but that would be something I'd really like to accomplish. I have ideas for series I'd still like, even at my age, that I'd still like to make happen. So there are things I'd still like to do.
That's great. We'd like to see any of these things as well. So
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Awesome. So are you working on anything at the moment or upcoming that you can tell us about?
I am actually. Just a week ago got the green light to do my next book.
Oh wow. Okay.
I can't say too much about it, but I can tell you it's about the American music industry in Russia.
Oh, okay. Oh. Wow, that's going to be timely and interesting, I would think.
Yeah,
it will be. And so, Eurovision 2000. I'm in Stockholm, and the singer from Russia, Alsu, who sang solo and came in second, she was signed to Universal Music. The head of Universal Music was an American. And so I met him in 2000, and we've stayed friends ever since. And he wants to write a book about the rise and fall of the American music industry in Russia. And so I hooked him up with my new publisher, who I was about to write a book for. And then he said, would you write my book? And I said, yeah, I'd love to. So that's my next book.
That's brilliant. Awesome. I look forward to it.
The last question is, will you be attending Eurovision next year in the UK?
Well, not that I know of, but I wouldn't rule it out completely. Nice. I do go to Sweden every year, except for 2 years of COVID, to cover something called the Polar Music Prize. It's like a Nobel Prize, but it's not an actual Nobel Prize. It was founded and funded by Stig Anderson, the manager of ABBA.
Yeah.
And this year was the 30th annual Polar Music Prize. And it's there are no nominees. They simply announce who the laureates are. And there's one from the pop world and one from the classical world every year. And it's gone to more people than I could tell you, but it's gone to Paul Simon and Joni Mitchell and B.B. King and Stevie Wonder and Led Zeppelin and Pink Floyd. These are the pop ones, obviously.
Yeah.
And I've been going. This is my 20th time going to the prize. And I've covered it for Billboard. And when they had press conferences, I moderated the press conferences there for them. So why am I telling you this? So it's moved around. It's been in May, it's been in June, it's been in August, but right now it's in May.
Yeah.
So it's possible I could go to Eurovision and go to Sweden.
Yeah.
Do we have the dates yet? I don't think they announced the dates.
I don't think they've announced the date as yet.
Right. They're down to 7 cities, I know.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it'll be possible or not. Also, I haven't been since 2007. I don't know what it would be like to go back. I don't know. So I'm not going to say no for sure, but I really don't know.
Okay. Well, I mean, I can't speak for Mike, but if I can get hold of tickets, I'm planning on being there. And the reason I was asking, I was going to say, if you're there, the round is on me.
Well, thank you. Yeah, absolutely. I'll get the next round.
Yeah.
I'll let's stay in touch. I'll keep you posted. By the way, on my website, I have links to all the podcasts I've done. So when this goes up, let me know and I'll put a link.
That's fantastic.
It's fredbronson.com. If anybody wants to go look, and there are photos from my Star Trek days, including some with Gene and there's one from the set of Menage a Troy. And anyway, if anybody wants to take a look, it's Fred Bronson.
We'll put it in
definitely highly recommend it. Yeah, we will put it in the description as well. Yeah, absolutely. And that's I think everything that we had written down to ask. And as I said, we've probably kept you way too long. We don't want to overstay the time.
First of all, I'm usually awake at this time, and it did not seem like 2 hours. It didn't.
No, but we could talk to you genuinely for hours.
Definitely, yeah. Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you both. And if you ever want me back, I don't know if I have any stories left, but there probably are. I'd be glad to do this again. It was a lot of fun. You asked a lot of great questions. So.
I'll keep in touch, and definitely we may do a review of one of your Trek episodes and have you talk about it if you don't mind.
I can explain why I did that or why I didn't. I don't know.
Exactly. No, thank you so much for taking the time. Yeah. It really does mean more to us than I could probably coherently express. But it's been a pleasure and a privilege.
Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, sir.
It's been lovely to meet you, sir. Yeah, absolutely. And you take care, and hopefully keep in touch, and we'll maybe speak again soon.
I would love to. You guys take care too. Thank you.
You too.
Thank you.
Good night now. Bye-bye.
Bye.
So hopefully you enjoyed that bumper interview. I don't think we were expecting that, but we are so grateful to Fred for taking the time to chat with us. And we're sure you enjoyed listening to it. We did. The time flew by, as he himself generously said. So
it was an absolute pleasure.
It really was. Hopefully we'll entertain you, and it's nice to know that we'll live on his website, which, as I kind of mentioned, I definitely recommend you going to check out fredbronson.com. It is fantastic. There's links to all of the books that he's written, a lot of the music journalism, some great photos, including some personal ones from the Trek days, and obviously all the podcasts, including this one. So that'll be good. So we are going to head out now. Obviously, we've probably kept you, if you've watched this all in one go, well done. And we've probably kept you well enough. So DK, have you got anything you wanted to say to the viewers and listeners before we run?
No, just thank you for joining us. I hope you enjoyed watching as much as we enjoyed talking to Fred. And once again, to Fred, thank you so much for giving us well over 2 hours of your time. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you, and we hope to do it again sometime. And as for the podcast, we hope you stick around. We've got some good episodes coming up. We've got some fresh faces and the guest front that we hope you'll enjoy. And yeah, it should be a blast. So please come back and join us.
Absolutely. So, everybody have a great rest of your day if you're listening to this or whatever. And in the meantime, remember, we are Starfleet. Live long and prosper. Where am I? There we go. Giving it a bit Mariner here. There we are.
You have been listening to the Hit or Miss Star Trek podcast, hosted by Michael Wilson and DK. Created, produced, and edited by Michael Wilson. Additional material produced by DK. Music by Timeless Journey. More information can be found at soundcloud.com/Timeless Journey. The Hit or Miss Star Trek podcast is based on an idea by Michael Wilson and Will Templar. Follow the podcast on Twitter at HomeTrek, on Instagram at Home Star Trek Podcast, or look for the Hit or Miss Star Trek podcast under Facebook groups. Links to all our social media accounts and more are in this episode's description. This podcast is available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Just look for Silver Screen Hit or Miss Star Trek. This has been a Mike's Podcast production, copyright 2022. Thank you for listening.